This is the Above It All program. Welcome to the Above It All program. I am here to do the Above It All program today for you so that you can enjoy the Above It All program or not enjoy the Above It All program. And so maybe you'll leave a comment about the Above It All program and how much you don't enjoy it or possibly enjoy the Above It All program. And I'm going to be talking about news today, and maybe a little bit of politics, just a little goddamn bit of politics, but on today's Above It All program. So, thank you for joining me. Be sure to like, comment, favorite, 5 stars. Please, and don't forget to subscribe or unsubscribe. Just click the button. That's all. Whatever it is currently, just switch to the other side. Doesn't matter to me. And gonna start today's show off with this. The 10 Commandments must be displayed in Louisiana classrooms under requirement signed into law. Now, you all, presumably, assuming you've seen my show before, know that I do not like religion. I don't like any religion. But that's not to say I don't like spiritualism. That's not to say I don't like, thinking about things greater than ourselves. I just think religion is a scam. I think if you are a Christian, you're fucking stupid, and I can't really trust your judgment on things because you fell for the biggest scam in the world. Same thing with Islam, same thing with Judaism. A lot of these religions, if you just believe, just to be clear, if you celebrate Christmas but you don't believe in God or Jesus or fucking whatever, you celebrate Passover but you don't really care about the Torah, that's fine. I mean, that's cool. I like traditions. I like holidays. I like that kind of stuff. But if you actually believe in the supernatural elements of this stuff, you are so fucking stupid. It really is hard for me to take you seriously about anything else. I'm sorry. That's just my opinion. And, to all those other motherfuckers out there, they're like, well, I'm a Christian, but I don't really think about it too much. I mean, that's another thing. How the fuck do you live on this planet without any simple curiosity about how we got here? So just to be clear, that's my position. I think religious people, 99% of them are fucking stupid, okay? They're just fucking dumb. I'm sorry. I know that there's religious people in my audience, whatever. You're all fucking dumb. I'm sorry. But I think that. So, that's not news. But what is news is that the 10 Commandments are in Louisiana's fucking schools. Louisiana has become the first state to require that the 10 Commandments be displayed in every public school classroom under a bill signed into law by Republican Gov. Jeff Landry on Wednesday. The GOP drafted legislation mandates that a poster-sized display of the 10 Commandments in large, easily readable font, don't forget the shellfish, that's got to be extremely legible, be required in all public classrooms from kindergarten to state-funded universities. Although the bill did not receive final approval from Landry, the time for gubernatorial action to sign or veto the bill has lapsed. Opponents question the law's constitutionality. I'm just going to be honest with you. The opponents do not question the constitutionality. It is unconstitutional. There's no question. There's no debate. There's no, I don't really know. That's not, it's not constitutional. I'm sorry. It's just, there's no establishment of religion. That's just how it is, okay? So, just throwing that one out there. This is how the media sanitizes fascism. They just say, well, the other side doesn't really know if this is allowed. I'm telling you, it's not allowed, okay? Warning that lawsuits are likely to follow. Proponents say the purpose of the measure is not solely religious, but that it has historical significance. Should we put, a poster of, the fucking pyramid in Giza on the wall? That has historical significance. I'm like, what the fuck? Should we put some cuneiform fucking tablet writings on the wall? That has historical significance. But no. It's got to be the 10 Commandments. But it has historical significance. In the law's language, the 10 Commandments are described as foundational documents of our state and national government. That's not true. The displays, which will be paired with a 4-paragraph context statement, describing how the Ten Commandments were a prominent part of American public education for almost 3 centuries, not true, must be in place in classrooms by the start of 2025. The posters would be paid for through donations. State funds will not be used to implement the mandate based on the language in the legislation. The law also authorizes, but does not require, the display of the Mayflower Compact, the Declaration of Independence, and the Northwest Ordinance in K-12 schools. So they're trying to say, like, okay, so we're going to put up some other stuff that's not necessarily religious, but then also the only thing that's actually required is the Ten Commandments? Come on. Similar bills requiring the Ten Commandments be displayed in classrooms have been proposed in other states, including Texas, Oklahoma, and Utah. However, the threats of legal battles over the constitutionality of such measures, no state besides Louisiana has had success in making the bills law. Legal battles over the display of the Ten Commandments in classrooms are not new. In 1980, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a similar Kentucky law was unconstitutional and violated the Establishment Clause of the U.S. Constitution, which says Congress can make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Now, just to be clear, now, for those of you that don't know, I'm a bit of an edgelord, okay? And so, when I was in school, I boycotted the Pledge of Allegiance. Multiple reasons. One, I did not approve of, the wars going on at the time. And most importantly, number 2, there's God in there. And I was very edgy, did not like God. I still don't like God, just throwing that out there. And so I boycotted the Pledge of Allegiance. I would argue that requiring people to stand up and pledge allegiance to God and the flag also is unconstitutional. That's what I argued when I was in 9th grade, and that's what I continue to argue now. So I'm just, throwing that one out there. Louisiana's controversial law in a state ensconced, I love that word, ensconced, and the Bible Belt, comes during a new era of conservative leadership in the state under Landry, who replaced the 2-term Democratic Governor John Bell Edwards in January. The GOP also has a 2/3 supermajority in the legislature, and Republicans hold every statewide elected position, paving the way for lawmakers to push through a conservative agenda. Anyway, this is the world that we live in. We can't have schools, have clean air, clean ventilation, healthy foods. We can't have quality public education, but what we can have are the Ten Commandments duct taped to the wall. Because we live in Fuckville. I don't really know what else to say. We live in Fuckville. And speaking of Fuckville, I didn't order any of these stories, so I don't know what order I'm going. All right, let's do this one. Speaking of Fuckville, okay, huge fan. CDC warns of disruptions to ADHD medications after a $100 million fraud arrest. Wait a second. So there's going to be disruptions to the medical supply because of fraud? How does that... What? Let's find out. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, is warning those who take the medication for ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, could face a disruption in accessing care after 2 executives were arrested for a $100 million fraud scheme. The CDC issued a health advisory to inform public health officials, clinicians, and patients. I got this dog next to me. Holy shit. Okay, I'm sorry. I have a dog. Just bear with me, okay? About the potential for medication distribution to be affected. The Department of Justice, DOJ, released information Thursday on the arrests of a California-based digital health company's CEO and clinical president. The duo was arrested for their alleged participation in attempts to distribute Adderall over the internet, commit health care fraud by submitting false claims for reimbursement for the drug, and obstructing justice. So CEOs do an illegal scam, and as a result, everyone out there who needs Adderall is going to pay the price. Isn't that strange? Isn't that a little weird? I don't know. I find that to be strange. I don't know. That, to me, I'm just saying, I think that's strange. The disruption also coincides with ongoing prescription drug shortage that includes ADHD drugs, the CDC said. Ruthia Hay, the founder and CEO of Dun Global Inc., was arrested in Los Angeles, and David Brody, the clinical president, was arrested in San Rafael, California. Quote, as alleged, these defendants exploited the COVID-19 pandemic to develop and carry out a $100 million scheme to defraud taxpayers and provide easy access to Adderall and other stimulants for no legitimate medical purpose. Attorney General Merrick Garland, thank you for refreshing the page, The Hill. Get more ad dollars. You ever notice that when that happens on news websites, that there's like a script in there that just randomly refreshes the page just so that they can serve you up extra ads, when are we going to see a lawsuit about that one? Attorney General Merrick Garland said in a statement, those seeking to profit from addiction by illegally distributing controlled substances over the internet should know that they cannot hide their crimes and that the Justice Department will hold them accountable. So there's a little bit of a complication here, because the idea that ADHD medication is so highly gatekept is kind of bullshit. It's bogus, right? If you require stimulants in order to function in our society as it is now, because you have a quote-unquote disability, also known as you're just a little different, but you can't actually fit into society because society is constructed by, normies, if you will. The idea that you need to go through all of these hoops to get your medication is garbage, and it makes people who need things suffer for the sake of other people who, like, let's just be honest with you, okay? Just to be honest with you, I don't give a fuck if someone wants to go and get addicted to Adderall and they, abuse the easy to acquire system or just lie to the doctors or whatever, or use telehealth. I don't care about that. If you want to get addicted to Adderall, that's your right? The idea that other people who need this drug can't have it because someone else might get it, who doesn't need it, and who decides who needs it and who doesn't, who decides who it's medication for and who decides who it's an addiction for. I don't know who decides that, right? This is just bogus. It's all a bunch of stupid garbage. He and Brody allegedly conspired to provide easy access to Adderall and other stimulants in exchange for payment of a monthly subscription fee. The indictment argues that they conspired to unlawfully enrich themselves by increasing subscription revenue each month. The company so they were trying to profit off of this, and now sucked into the narrative is the idea that telehealth is somehow an evil, responsible actor or something. Being able to talk to your doctor on the phone is somehow so egregious. Garbage, bullshit. The company allegedly obtained more than $100 million in revenue for the prescription of more than 40 million Adderall pills. The CDC urged people to only obtain medication from licensed clinician and licensed pharmacies. Drug overdose deaths and illegal drug market threats continue across the country. Again, if you want to curb overdoses, you don't make everyone who needs a certain medication struggle to even just survive. What you do is you make the conditions of society better to the point where people don't feel the need to get addicted to drugs just to live, and then they'll accidentally overdose, right? But of course, the powers that be don't give a fuck about actually curbing overdoses. They just want to, get in the news and pretend like, yeah, we're doing something to combat the drugs. In an emailed statement, Dun Global said it strongly disagrees with the charges filed against he and Brody. He is their name, so it's a little awkward there. Dun Global will continue to operate and do everything in our power to ensure that tens of thousands of Americans who rely on us do not lose access to their mental health care. And that's the thing here, is at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, which of course is still happening, but when the government pretended to care about it, and just to be clear, I'm going to talk about this more later. Trump handled the pandemic better than Biden. Under Trump, we had protections. Little bit, not good enough, right? But we had some protections in place. And one of those was that instead of going to the doctor's office for things that are non-emergency, right? You don't need to go sit across the room with a doctor unless, your leg is broken and or you got sepsis or something, right? So they allowed you to just basically call them on the phone, also known as telehealth, use your webcam or whatever, and do most of the business that way. That's an objective upgrade for society, right? And sure, some of these people were trying to manipulate that and maybe take advantage of that, and that's bad. However, to lump telehealth as a concept in with all the other fraud stuff is just bogus, it's garbage, it's stupid, okay? The problem was that they were trying to jack the prices. The problem was not that people had access to their doctors without having to drive. Now, just for example, when I lived in North Carolina, The closest doctor to me that I was eligible, the closest doctor to me was 5 hours away. 5 hours away. So telehealth was a huge fucking bonus for me because I didn't need to drive 10 fucking hours to go see the doctor, okay? And so telehealth, especially if you're disabled or you don't have a car, or I don't have a driver's license, so if that were to have been required on me, I would just have not been able to go. I would have not had a doctor for that period of time. And so, again, it puts undue burden on people because they think some other people might take advantage or some garbage, right? And it just makes people who are suffering suffer more, and the people who aren't really suffering, they're kind of just left the same, like it's not like, oh, I'm an Adderall addict and I can't get my fix. Okay. And I mean, like, I don't, that's not really that big of a deal versus I need Adderall to survive and I can't get my medication, so this fucking tinfoil hat keeps falling off. There you go. And, yeah, it's just a bunch of bullshit. So again, people that need medication are suffering needlessly because the people in power want to play patty cake and do all this stupid fucking bullshit. So, pretty cool. Pretty cool. Just a reminder that we live in Fuckville, in case you forgot. In case you fucking forgot, we live in Fuckville. Check this out. Linda Tirado, journalist who was half blinded in Minneapolis's protests in 2020, enters hospice care. So this is the person. There's a little picture of them in bed. There you go. Linda Tirado keeps fighting. Yesterday, in a Substack plea for financial assistance, journalist Noah Berlatsky issued an update on his friend. It encapsulates Linda Tirado's heartbreaking situation better than we could. So here's the quote. My friend, the journalist and photographer Linda Tirado, posted this week on Substack that she is dying. Linda suffered a traumatic brain injury during the George Floyd protests when a Minneapolis cop fired a projectile at her, probably a rubber bullet. She lost her eye, and she's been deteriorating slowly since. And now, I guess, less slowly. She still has some lucid moments, but they're becoming more infrequent. Linda received a settlement from Minneapolis, but medical care has eaten through most of it, and she and her husband and 2 children are struggling to afford palliative care. So when they call these things less lethal munitions, basically what that means is they'll still kill you. It's not like, okay, I'm just going to be honest with you. I would rather get shot in the face and die instantly than be blinded and then have, like, internal bleeding in my brain that slowly kills me over the course of 4 years. I'm just being honest with you. So, like, when they say less lethal, you can make an argument it's, like, even more lethal, like, it is more torturous. And also, there's a less blame on the cops, because if you die 4 years later from complications, well, can you really say that the cop killed you? Well, legally speaking, the cop obviously killed her, or, will, in the future, will have killed her, right? But, like, legally speaking, well, I don't know. We can make an argument that, maybe you should have ate more fiber and then maybe you wouldn't have died in your brain or so, that's usually the shit that they say is they'll just blame their lifestyle or some shit. But, let's keep reading. In 2022, Tony Webster wrote a Minnesota Reformer story about the Minneapolis City Council agreeing to pay Tirado $600,000. $600,000. Now, keep in mind, there's $0 left. So basically, what this is going to amount to is, sorry we killed your mom, here's $0 because all of the money went to the hospital bills. Sorry we killed your mom, you get nothing to the kids. Sorry, we murdered your mother and you get nothing. Nothing whatsoever. Hey, we gave you $600,000 for hospital bills. Isn't that something? We gave you the hospital bills. We gave you the money to pay for the hospital bills. So they both cancel each other out. Your mom's dead. Have fun. Be sure to go to school on time, Timmy. Or what, it's fucking garbage. She sustained when police allegedly fired a projectile into her eye during the protest that followed George Floyd's murder. The city never admitted blame in the settlement, which paid out a fraction of the $2.4 million settlement Soren Stevenson earned after he was blind in one eye by a police projectile in the same protests. Quote, that part of my career was effectively ended, May 29, 2020, Tirado told Webster, adding that her body and brain continued to suffer from the event. Quote, I did the right thing. Anytime you as a member of the press are covering people who are hurting, it is worth it. In 2013, Tirado authored a viral essay, Why I Make Terrible Decisions, or Poverty Thoughts, about living in poverty in the richest country on earth. She would expand on it the following year with her memoir, Hand to Mouth, Living in Bootstrap America. Here's how you can support Tirado today. So if you want, to check any of these out, there you go. Feel free to send some money on PayPal or Venmo. And again, we live in Fuckville, where cops can kill you and the government gives you money, but also says we didn't do it. So the government simultaneously says we did nothing wrong and also says here's $600 or $600,000. Why are you giving someone money if you did nothing wrong? Right? But again, we live in Fuckville. And again, this is what we were saying at the time, is that police are killing people. And less lethal, quote-unquote, munitions will often kill people later, when the cameras aren't looking. Right? Everyone was watching in 2020. How many people who are watching all this stuff in 2020 are going to hear about all of the people who died later as a result of internal bleeding from these giant rubber bullets, It's just insane. We live in Fuckville. I really don't know what else to say. It's really bad. Speaking of Fuckville, let's check this out. Why some scientists think extreme heat could be the reason people keep disappearing in Greece. Now, as far as headlines go, this one's fucking insane. Some scientists? We're in a fucking unprecedented heat wave globally. And then you're going to write an article that makes it seem like it's some sort of hypothesis. We don't really know why people are dropping dead, but someone has a hypothesis. Maybe, I don't know, it's the fucking heat wave. And of course, this article is about Greece. But of course, there's all kinds of people dying all over the world. In India, there's been a lot of deaths from heat waves going on, but this is just an article from about Greece. So, just throwing that out there. It was a shock when Michael Mosley, a doctor and well-known TV presenter in the UK, was found dead earlier this month after hiking in scorching temperatures on the Greek island of Symi. Now, I'm just going to also say there's a little bit of like a skill issue at play here. Like, when you're going hiking and you're not accounting for weather, like, are you fucking dumb? Like, oh, you want to go hiking and then there's like a thunderstorm. Oh, you want to go hiking and then there's a heat wave. Oh, you want to go hiking and then there's like a hailstorm. Maybe plan your hikes. So I'm not, hey, it's the fossil fuel industry that ultimately killed this person. But I'm just throwing that as a little bit of a skill issue. Just a tad, just a small amount of skill required to not hike when it's fucking 40 degrees, okay? I'm just saying, if you are hiking in 40-degree weather, I don't want to say you deserve it, but I question your sanity. It is now one of a series of tourist deaths and disappearances in Greece as the country endures a powerful early summer heat wave with temperatures pushing above 40 degrees, 104 in Fahrenheit. For all you American morons out there that don't know how to read temperature readings, we have that made-up version called Fahrenheit. We give it to the kids and the intellectually disabled, also known as Americans. On Saturday, a Dutch tourist was found dead on the island of Samos. The following day, the body of an American tourist was found dead on Mathraki, a small island coast west of Corfu. Albert Calabay, another American tourist, has been missing since he set out for a hike on June 11 on Amorgos, and 2 French women disappeared on Sekinos after going for a walk. All these cool-ass names. I want to move to Greece. The bodies of those who died still need to be examined to establish the precise cause of death, but authorities are warning people not to underestimate the impacts of the searing temperatures. We have monkeys dropping dead from the trees in Brazil and shit, So I don't know, maybe it's the heat. Maybe we got fucking bats dropping dead in the fucking streets of India. Maybe it's the heat. I don't know. It could be. Or it could be bird flu, it's also possible. Quote, there is a common pattern, Petros Vasilakis, the police spokesman for the Southern Aegean, told Reuters. They all went for a hike amid high temperatures. Now, again, I don't want to sit here and say that everyone who dies from a heat-related thing, there's often times you can't help it. Power outage, your AC goes out, you're elderly, you have heat stroke and die. That's a thing that, you can't really control. But I'm just saying, if you are going on a why do people go on hikes? Usually people go on hikes because they like exercise. And why do you like exercise? Because you want to be healthy. So if you want to be healthy, why the fuck would you go on a hike in 40 fucking degrees? I'm sorry, like I question the sanity a little bit. Okay? I'm just saying. Come on, dude. Just throwing it out there. As climate change fuels longer and more severe heat waves, scientists are trying to unravel how our brains will cope. The brain is the master switch. Research has traditionally focused on the impact of extreme heat on muscle, skin, the lungs, and the heart, but the brain, for me, is the key to it all, said Damian Bailey, a physiology and biochemistry professor at the University of South Wales. Wales. It is the master switch for the body, he told CNN. It's in the brain that body temperature is regulated. The hypothalamus, small diamond-shaped structure acts as a thermostat. It performs a delicate dance to keep the body's internal temperature at or very close to 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 Fahrenheit. When it's hot, the hypothalamus activates the sweat glands and widens blood vessels to cool the body down. But the brain functions well within a narrow range of temperatures, and even small changes can affect it. Many people will be familiar with a feeling of slowness and laziness on a warm summer's day. But as heat increases, it can have serious effects, including lowering the fluids in the body and decreasing blood flow to the brain. He compares the brain to a Hummer. It needs vast resources to function. Tests he has run on research participants in an environmental chamber where he cranked temperatures up from 21 to 40 degrees Celsius showed a drop in blood flow to the brain by about 9 to 10%. Quote, that is a big deal in terms of not getting enough fuel to an engine which is running at high end all the time. So you can read more of this if you'd like. But basically, we're all fucked. I don't mean to be alarmist. I don't mean to freak you out. But you're fucked. You're not going to make it. I'm sorry. It's just being honest with you, right? You know, in 15 years, we're going to have billions upon billions of climate refugees. That's going to destabilize the rest of the world unless European and, you know, U.S. powers and like stuff like that just decide to like lock everyone into the Middle East and genocide them all. I think that that's the most likely like occurrence. Like if you want to compare what is more likely to happen, climate, like billions of climate refugees entering Europe and the U.S., you know, countries that hate immigrants versus just letting them all die from heat stroke and heat exhaustion, I think that we're going to see the mass genocide of pretty much everyone in the Middle East over the next 20 or 30 years, you know, starting in the next 10 years. That's going to be a fucking problem. And then, of course, you know, everyone that lives everywhere also is going to have to deal with this. And we're just basically, it's going to destabilize the world. It really is. Right. So what's going to happen when you have billions of people who need to get the fuck out of there and go to better climates like in Europe or in the US or stuff like that? And then also when you factor in that a lot of these countries are nuclear powers, right? So imagine a situation where India is like, all right, India is completely uninhabitable. We just don't have the supplies to keep air conditioning. At some point, air conditioning is just not enough, right? And then they say, all right, let in all of our people into Europe or we're going to nuke your ass. You know, like, let's imagine that, right? You know, let's just throw in that situation out there. So again, climate destabilization is already happening. It's going to continue getting worse and worse and worse. And you need to adapt or die. In the same way that the ongoing pandemic is forcing you to either adapt or die. So imagine you're in a situation where you've gotten COVID 17,000 times and then you're in a heat wave and your body is just fucking sick from being infected by COVID 17,000 times and you die easier, right? So the world powers want you to be sicker and sicker and sicker. Your peers want you to be sicker and sicker and sicker. Also, you can go see Taylor Swift, and then you can just rot in your bed for the next 10 years, and then eventually a heat wave is going to kill you off. That's the goal of the powers that be. Kill as many people off as possible, and then maybe we don't have to worry as much. And again, I don't see any other option. I don't see, what are we going to do, revolt against the powers that be? Are we going to have a global revolution and create a one world government controlled by people that are intelligent and compassionate and caring? In 10 years? Hey, maybe that's going to happen. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think what's more likely is everyone's going to slowly die off, and then there's going to be an acceleration every year. There's going to be acceleration. More and more people are going to die off more and more and more, right? And then our population is just going to decline until we hit like maybe either zero or like maybe 1 million people left on the planet, you know, and all of those people, of course, are going to be the descendants of the rich people who could build bunkers and air-conditioned super fucking bubbles in the fucking core of the earth or whatever the fuck, right? So we're fucked, in other words. I don't know what else to tell you. And just to be clear, just to be very clear, we are not fucked in the good dick way. This is the very, very bad dick way, okay? Just throwing that one out there. Not good. Not good. I got some other shit here. I got some shit here. I got some fucking shit here. I always try to figure out like which one I want to do next. All right. This is an interview with you know, someone who's an expert in the field of COVID. It's an article based on the interview, at least. And I want to read this. This part has some very interesting stuff. And of course, you know, on this show, I talk about reality. You know, a lot of left-wing shows, they live in a bubble where reality doesn't exist. COVID ended 15 years ago because Barack Obama and Joe Biden created the super vaccine that cured all illness. That's the world that they live in. But in reality, we have a headline like this. Quote, debilitating a generation. Expert warns that long COVID may eventually affect most Americans. According to the CDC, I said this before, the CDC says each COVID infection has a 1 in 5 chance of giving you long COVID. And, you know, based on the government's, you know, plan, they want everyone to be infected with COVID 2 to 5 times a year, which would result in 100% long COVID in Americans by 2026. Those are the CDC numbers. The CDC numbers, which are extremely conservative, right? So, I don't know. Hey, when everyone is sick and in bed all the time and can't move, and I'm running around and making I'll be the only YouTuber left. I'll be the only, all my competition will be eradicated because they'll be like that one, was a physics girl or whatever, where she's just been bedridden. She had a mega successful YouTube channel and career, and now she got long COVID and she's been bedridden and she's just slowly dying and no one cares apparently. And because the next one's going to come along to capture your minds. In a candid discussion with INET's Lynn Paramore, Dr. Philip Alvelda highlights the imminent dangers of long COVID, criticizing governments and health agencies for ongoing preventable suffering and deaths. This is part 2 of a 2-part interview. So again, this part to me was more interesting. You can obviously go check out the whole thing yourself by using a search engine to find this article. Think you've grasped the full extent of COVID's ongoing impact? Now, I just want to say, I do think I've grasped the full. I just want to. I'm one of the rare people. I personally believe I have grasped the full extent. So I'm just throwing that out there. Think again. As Americans shrug off vaccines, again, only 20% of Americans got the latest round of vaccines, and the vaccines weren't even that good anyway, right? So let's throw that out there as well. How many Americans got Novavax, which is the best vaccine, versus how many got the mRNA vaccines, which are shown to not be as effective, right? This was pretty much inevitable, without new guidance urging a change in strategy and nobody telling us the full truth. The danger is clear and present. COVID isn't merely a respiratory illness. It is a multidimensional threat impacting brain function. Again, we have teenagers getting diagnosed with dementia. We have fucking kids dropping dead from heart attacks in gym class, right? I wonder why. That hasn't happened historically. All of a sudden it's happening. I wonder what changed. Dumb fucks, you know, the people that have an IQ about maybe 6 or 7 are going to say it's the vaccines. Yeah, the vaccines that 20% of Americans got are killing everyone. Somehow, I guess, you know, whatever, right? Attacking almost all of the body's organs, producing elevated risks of all kinds and weakening our ability to fight off other diseases. Again, you're seeing surges in other disease and other viruses and stuff like that, like bird flu, for example. We have RSV. We have all kinds of different, you know, not even just bird flu, but all kinds of other influenza, increasing at an exponential rate because everyone's immune system got fucked by COVID, so they're just getting taken out or, you know, getting bedridden by other like milder diseases. What does that remind you of? Oh yeah, AIDS, right? So keep in mind, zero people have ever died of AIDS. What they die of is getting infected by something very minor like the flu, and because AIDS destroyed their immune system, the flu wins every time. No one just dies because their immune system stops completely, right? They die because they have no immune system left, and then something sneaks in and kills them, okay? That's what's happening with COVID. And again, if you look at the HIV and AIDS pandemic that was happening, they didn't fucking make this connection until 5 to 10 years after, like, the bulk of, infections started happening over and over and over again. They didn't realize what was happening until 5 to 10 years later. So again, we're in year 5 of the COVID pandemic. Really, we're in, like, year 3 of, like, the let it rip version of just everyone get infected 15 times a year. So really, it's not going to be another 5 to 10 years until people actually start reckoning with the fact that they've killed themselves, their family, their kids, and everyone around them because they're too fucking stupid to read a science book, right? Oh, but I wanted to go see Taylor Swift for the 15th time. Yay! So now I'm permanently disabled and my kids are gonna die. That's great. Wonderful parenting going on, by the way. I gotta take this off. The meme has run its course, okay? Dr. Philip Alvelda, a former program manager in DARPA's Biological Technologies Office that pioneered the synthetic biology industry and the development of our mRNA vaccine technology, is the founder of Medio Labs, a COVID diagnostic testing company. He has stepped forward as a strong critic of government COVID management, accusing health agencies of inadequacy and even deception. Now, again, I am someone that, yes, I blame the government, but I also blame the people. I do. If you are a parent and you are raising your kid and you just blindly trust the government and listen to everything they say, you're a bad parent. Because if you are going to bring a child into this world under the illusion that the U.S. government cares about your health and safety, that is just, you are not equipped to raise a child. It's just, I'm sorry, you're not equipped to raise a child. It's just, you're not. You're too fucking stupid. It really is just how it is. And in the same sense, let's say you're not a parent, right? You trust the U.S. government. The U.S. government, you trust them on your personal health and safety. You think Joe Biden is deeply and personally concerned with the same country that has a fucking, mafia cartel in charge of the healthcare industry. You think that country cares about your health and safety and would not lie to you about COVID. I'm sorry. Yes, the government's lying, but anyone who falls for it is also really fucking stupid, and I'm not gonna hold any punches from them. Yeah, you are fucking dumb. You're a dummy. You're a dumb fuck shit for brains. If you thought COVID ended, you are dumber than dog shit, okay? But guess what? Being dumb is not a permanent state, right? Unless you get long COVID 15 times, then it might be. But being dumb can be reversed by, learning, by reading, by going out there with a curious mind and reading more information, and then you can cure your dumbassery. So that's what I advocate for. Maybe you thought the pandemic ended, you got COVID again, and you started researching, and then you found out, gee whiz, we're actually fucked, and then you took COVID seriously again. That's possible. You know what? Again, it sucks that you got COVID. You were really fucking stupid, but hey, you know what? You learned the lesson, and that's what humanity is all about. That's what our human brain is all about. From having bad things happen to us and then learn how to avoid those bad things in the future, right? And so sometimes, right, the human response to that is on overdrive, and then you have something like PTSD, where you're scared to leave the house because one time you left the house and you got hit by a car in your front yard or something, or on your street. Let's say you were just walking around your block and then a car hit you. Now you're afraid to leave the house. You could argue that that's PTSD, which is on overdrive, right? But again, you could also argue that, hey, if I stay in my house, I'm not going to get hit by cars in here, right? So it is somewhat logical, right? And that is what is beautiful about the human brain, is we can learn from our mistakes. But most Americans, most people in the world are zombies. They don't learn from their mistakes. They make the same mistake over and 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 over again, and then magically wonder why. Why did the government do this to me? Why? I don't know, maybe because you let them do it to you, but okay, let's keep going. So I just wanted to say, again, I agree with blaming the government, but I also blame people. I think people are fucking stupid, and I think it's on you to know better. I really do. I really think if you trust the U.S. government on your health and safety, you're fucking stupid. I don't know, man. I'm sorry. I'm never not going to blame the people. What do you think? Let the government lie to them? The people, right? So Al Velda is pushing for accountability and immediate action to tackle long COVID and fend off future pandemics with stronger public health strategies. Contrary to popular belief, he warns, COVID is not like the flu. Again, Donald Trump conspiracy that you see communists and leftists advocate for. You see a lot of people on left-wing media advocate that COVID is the flu, right? All your favorite left-wing news shows probably believe Donald Trump is telling them the truth about their health and safety. Now, if you phrased it that way, maybe they would say, no, I don't know, no. But in reality, again, actions speak louder than words. That's what they advocate on their programs. New variants evolve much faster, making annual shots inadequate. Again, we should be on a 6-month situation. You could argue for certain people on a 3-month situation with booster shots. And also, the booster shots need to be tailored to the variants that are evolving. And then also, you need to be wearing fucking masks and respirators every time you leave the house. If you leave the house and go into a public location where there's other people and you don't wear a respirator, you're dumber than dog shit and you will not fucking survive. I know it feels bad to hear this. You will not fucking survive until the 2030s or the 2040s. Maybe you're just not gonna fucking make it. If you are so fucking stupid that you're breathing in airborne viruses on a daily basis to destroy your immune system and every organ in your body, and you don't fucking get your shit together, you're not gonna make it, okay? I'm sorry, it's just how it is. That's just, I'm here to tell you so that you can make it, but if you don't listen to me, don't come to me 5 years later and say, wow, Andrea, you were so right. I haven't been able to get out of bed. I haven't been able to wipe my own ass for 3 years. You were so right. I wish I listened to you. I've had people tell me that already. Hey, I didn't believe that COVID was that big of a deal. I went out a bunch, I got COVID, and I've never felt the same since. I've had people tell me that. Now, again, I understand also, I am in a fucking incredibly privileged position where I don't live with stupid motherfuckers. I know a lot of people, they live with family members or roommates that are stupid motherfuckers and bring COVID into the house constantly, right? I'm not in that position. Thankfully, don't know how it happened, but fortunately, I don't live with stupid motherfuckers, and I also work from home, so I don't need to leave the house, right? So I'm very privileged, and I'm using my privilege to actively stay informed on the situation, and then turn that into this fucking YouTube show. So that's what my goals are, to read the information so you don't have to, and then tell it to you, and I don't know, an entertaining format? Is this entertaining? Wah! Am I entertaining yet? Maybe, it's possible. Let's keep going. Reinfections happening rapidly. The majority of Americans may eventually grapple with some form of long COVID. Now, again, it's not a binary, right? Long COVID is not this certain section of symptoms or nothing, right? It's a spectrum. You can have COVID hang out in your liver, and then you can have a lot of liver failure symptoms. You can have COVID hang out in your gut, and then you're going to have lots of gut situations like, leaky bowel, that kind of stuff. You can have COVID hang out in your heart, and then you drop dead during gym class, right? All kinds of these things. It really kind of just depends on what kind of deck you had to begin with, what kind of health situation you had to begin with. Let's repeat that. At the current rate of infection, most Americans may get long COVID. I would even say, again, the CDC's own calculation, if you just do basic math, the CDC's own calculation says 100% of Americans by 2026, okay? Maybe let's just say 99.9%. I'm certainly not going to get fucking long COVID. I guarantee you, I will be the last motherfucker on earth who has not gotten COVID if I need to be, okay? I'm just telling you that's my position. In the following discussion with the Institute of New Economic Thinking, Al Velda discusses the wider social fallout from this ongoing health crisis, which could be avoided with the right mindset and action. So let's just get into this. Lynn Paramore, you've raised concerns, this is the interview part, about long COVID rates surging under the radar. The National Academy's new 265-page report is eye-opening, listing up to 200 symptoms affecting nearly every organ, hurting your ability to work, lasting months to years. Now, again, it can last months, and you could theoretically recover, provided you don't get reinfected over and over and over again, right? But what's happening? People get sick. Typically, they don't even stay home and rest. They just go back to work the next day, get sick again, over and over and over again, so you never actually get a recovery period. They say cases of long COVID are rising in 2024. How is this impacting people's lives? Philip Alvelda says some people can get long COVID and maybe it ages them a little bit, but it doesn't change them very much. Now, again, that's another thing too, is that have you ever had someone in your family who has cancer? A lot of the time, you have no idea they have cancer until they fucking drop on the floor one day in a pool of blood leaking out of their mouth. And then you go to the doctor and it's like, oh shit, you got stage 4 esophageal cancer. Whoops. How did you not know it? Because they were hiding their symptoms. 75% of Americans said they're not honest when they're sick. They will not cancel social events when they're sick. They'll just pretend they're not sick or try to hide their symptoms, right? That's a survey of self-admitted, by the way. 75% admitted in the survey, so it's probably even higher. Right, so again, let's factor that in as well. The daughter of a friend was infected in 2020 and started having seizures. So she had to drop out of school and could not exercise. It took her 4 years to recover. She was just getting back to health, but a strenuous workout, a few late nights studying, and stress triggered more seizures and a setback. So again, you think you've recovered, you try to get back to your normal life, and then you're not actually recovered. You're just you lulled into a false sense of security. And again, if you've ever been sick, I haven't been sick in 5 years because I wear a respirator every time I leave the house. Right? I also don't leave the house for frivolous reasons, like a Taylor Swift concert. But I remember when I used to get sick, maybe once every couple of years. I remember, if you've ever gotten sick for I used to have chronic illness when I was a kid, right? So I didn't really know what my baseline was. I just adapted to being unhealthy physically and mentally, and that was my baseline. And so when I eventually, got rid of my chronic illnesses. I've said this before on my shows many times. I had lots of issues when I was a kid. GI issues is one thing that was a major setback for me. And I changed my diet, and then that got rid of the GI issues. And then that also had a domino effect of getting rid of a lot of other issues, and my health improved dramatically. And so then I was like, oh shit, is this what being healthy is like? This is when I was like 20, 21. Is I kind of outgrew this illness by changing my lifestyle. I started exercising a lot more. I started eating healthy, and a lot of my symptoms went away. And then I remember getting sick from a cold one day, and it lasted maybe about 4 or 5 days. But on day 3 or 4, I just forgot what the baseline was. I was like, shit, if I don't even remember what it's like to be regular or to be healthy or to be at my baseline, right? So if you're sick for months or years, which I've experienced with being when I was a kid, you forget what your baseline is. So when you have a small upswing, you feel slightly better one day, you think, great, I'm fully recovered, even though really you're fucking 90% down from your fucking all-time high, right? And you really only just went up a percent or two in feeling, and then now you feel like you're on top of the world because you just forgot what being healthy is like. So that's what happened here. A new report, and also a few late nights studying. Come on, really? We're really forcing sick kids to study late into the fucking AM? Are you kidding me? A new report commissioned by the Social Security Administration in 2022 says that long COVID is a chronic illness. People see gradual improvement in symptoms over time, but a plateau may occur 6 to 12 months post-infection, and only about 22% fully recover within a year. And again, when you're getting repeatedly infected over and over and over and over again, you're just starting the clock. You're rolling the clock back to 0 every time you get infected. Others remain stable or get worse. And then LP says, those people may never get to their former health. PA says, that's correct. LP says, a recent JAMA study found that the U.S. adults with long COVID are more prone to depression and anxiety. Yeah, when your life fucking sucks, guess what? You're going to be pretty sad about it. And they're struggling to afford treatment. Again, we live in fuckville in the United States, right? So, most doctors don't even believe that long COVID is real because most doctors are fucking stupid, right? So how are you going to get diagnosed with something that a lot of doctors don't even believe is real? And how are you going to get treatment if you can't even get a diagnosis? That's a huge problem. Given the virus's impact on the brain, I guess the link to mental health issues isn't surprising. And Alvelda says there are all kinds of weird things going on that could be related to COVID's cognitive effects. I'll give you an example. We've noticed since the start of the pandemic that accidents are increasing. I've said this before. Again, school children their test scores are going like deep into the fucking molten crust of the Earth's core and then blowing up because they're so fucking shitty. People are getting dumber and dumber. There's more accidents. People are getting more aggressive. There's a lot more fights happening in a lot of areas. People are like, again, just look at social media. People on social media getting dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber. It's a global phenomenon. The global IQ, and I have a lot of problems with IQ, but the global IQ has dropped significantly. Life expectancy has dropped significantly. That's just the world that we live in. We live in Fuckville. A recent report published by TRIP, a transportation research nonprofit, found that traffic fatalities in California increased by 22% from 2019 to 2022. They also found that the likelihood of being killed in a traffic crash increased by 28% over that period. Other data, like studies from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, came to a similar conclusion, reporting that traffic fatalities hit a 16-year high across the country in 2021. Now, again, you might be saying, oh, well, it's, explain why it was at this high 16 years ago if COVID wasn't around. Because over the course of time, cars are manufactured to get safer and safer and safer and safer, right? So the idea that we've essentially undone 16 years of car safety innovations because people are getting dumber and more aggressive on the road, that's saying something, okay? The TRIP report also looked at traffic fatalities on the national level and found that the traffic fatalities increased by 19%. LP asks, what role might COVID play? PA responds with, research points to the various ways COVID attacks the brain. Now, again, I'm putting in also my own spit on this as well. When you are driving, right, you need to be extremely attentive, right? And there was a study that found out that COVID affects people, even if they don't develop long COVID, right? Because long COVID, a lot of that is just based on feels, really. But even if you were infected with long COVID or infected with COVID and did not identify yourself with having long COVID, there was a drop in reaction time, a significant drop in a lot of people that just got infected with COVID like 6 months ago and they feel fine. But the reaction speeds are slowing down. What is driving on like 70-mile-an-hour highways all about? Reaction speed, right? So if your reaction is slowed by even a quarter of a second, that's going to result in a lot more car crashes, right? So some people who have been infected have suffered motor control damage, and that could be a factor in car crashes. News is beginning to emerge about other ways COVID impacts driving. For example, in Ireland, a driver's COVID-related brain fog was linked to a crash that killed an elderly couple. Damage from COVID could be affecting people who are flying our planes, too. We've had pilots that had to quit because they couldn't control the airplanes anymore. We know that medical events among U.S. military pilots were shown to have risen over 1,700% from 2019 to 2022. That is insane. That is insane. U.S. military pilots, 1,700% increase in medical events. What the fuck does that mean, by the way? Medical events. Question. I suspect that most of the time people don't realize that COVID or long COVID is an underlying factor in things like accidents or just feeling more tired or foggy or generally unwell than usual. Answer. Correct. The surges in these incidents are exactly correlated with each wave of the pandemic, and I want to highlight here that they are correlated strongly with COVID surges, and most explicitly not correlated with vaccine distributions. A lot of people, they see what's going on with how the virus is destroying everyone's ability to live, and they're so fucking dumb, they blame the vaccine. The only way I would blame the vaccine is the vaccines were not as effective as they should have been, and also Americans aren't fucking getting the vaccine. How can you blame the vaccines when only 20% of Americans are actually keeping up to date with their vaccines? That conspiracy just falls to the wayside, just like Dr. Fauci would say, right? Immediately, right? Genocide architect of the U.S., Dr. Fauci, I should say. He's a genocide architect. He's one of the worst people in this country's history. Sorry if that offends you, okay? All of this has... where are we? We know people are generally sicker today than before the pandemic. There are more people unable to work. Again, disability rates are crashing through the roof so much that the UK government redefined what qualifies as disability to get the chart to go back down so that they could say we're solving disability. They just redefined what criterion or what criteria is required to reach, the status of disabled. And then they said, look, we won, everybody. That's the UK government for you. All of this has gone up overall, and it's key to point out that we're not just talking about older people. The people who are proportionally most affected right now are the caregivers of school-aged children, parents, that are sending their kids to COVID factories over and over, which is killing both them and their parents, okay? and them and their kids, I should say, and their parents if they go visit grandma. Question: how do vaccines safeguard us from both the short-term and long effects of COVID? Answer: the latest boosters and vaccines do offer some protection from catching the disease. And while it varies somewhat from variant to variant, that starts at about 60%, peaking 2 weeks after inoculation and lasts for about 4 months. And then after that declines at about 4% decrease in effectiveness per month thereafter. So again, only 60% of Americans got the first round of vaccines. And the first round of vaccines was not tailored to any of the mutant variants like Delta, Omicron, or any of the new offshoots, right? And so basically, at this point, almost nobody has vaccine immunization from COVID, right? That's just, again, only 20% keep up with the boosters. And again, the Novavax booster is the least likely for people to get over Moderna and Pfizer. And the Novavax booster is better than Moderna and Pfizer. So how many people are getting Novavax versus Moderna and Pfizer? Or like AstraZeneca, I don't know if they still make vaccines. That wasn't really much of a thing in the US. Right. So again, the version of the vaccine you get does have an impact on how long you're protected and what kind of protections you have. But ultimately, it's better than a vaccine. Wearing a fucking respirator. Obviously, you should do both, but wear a fucking respirator, you stupid fuckers. It really isn't that hard, okay? What they do very well is prevent bad outcomes in the acute phase of the infection, when one is most likely, though not certain, to have symptoms. Now, again, it decreased the amount of death, and with that, the U.S. government and also all global governments decided they would use the decrease in death to cover up all the other issues and to claim victory. Like Joe Biden declared victory from COVID like 15 times over the course of his presidency, and he'd probably do it again. What they do poorly is prevent bad outcomes in the post-acute phase, whether one has had symptoms or not. So you can get asymptomatically infected, and then all of a sudden you're like, shit, I'm tired all the time. And you don't attribute it to COVID because you don't remember getting acutely infected, right? Recent studies have shown that the very latest booster vaccines only offers a 20 to 25% reduction in the likelihood of long COVID. And again, that's why regardless of how many vaccines you get, you should be wearing, if you do not wear a respirator every time you leave the house into a crowded, or not even just crowded, I hate when people say that. So anytime you're around any other person outdoors, indoors, if you are not wearing a respirator, you are not going to make it. In the same way that if you leave the house and you don't have pants on and you're swinging your dick and balls everywhere, you're not going to make it. Why? Because you're going to get sent to jail and you're going to go to prison. And this is a jail and a prison of your own creation and not of the government's doing in this. Well, I mean, the government's actually, they're disinforming you so that you actually imprison yourselves, right? But again here, the goal of the government here is to get you as sick as possible so that you cannot actually do anything about it. You can't go to protests. You can't, revolt. You can't do anything that would threaten the government's power. And you can't, rise the corporate ladder. How are you going to get promoted at your job if you fucking can't think straight? And, you're probably going to end up getting fired. You're probably going to get demoted, right? So again, this is all a bunch of fucked up shit here. If you do not wear a respirator every time you go around other people, you are just simply not going to make it. If that offends you, if that's upsetting to you, whoops. You shouldn't have fucking been born, I guess, because we live in Fuckville and there's really nothing you can do about it other than protect yourself and the people in your immediate vicinity. It's the last bit of information the public health agencies are failing to openly and clearly disclose, and most governments continue to pretend otherwise, having yet to take meaningful action to stem a growing post-COVID pandemic of disability. Now, this is another thing here, a growing post-COVID pandemic of disability. So this is a problem because a lot of people would read this and say, oh, it's post-COVID, as in COVID is no longer here. But what they're really saying is post-COVID, as in you get COVID and then you become disabled. So just to clarify what that means here. Question. You've criticized the track record of the CDC and the WHO, particularly their stubborn denial that COVID is airborne. Answer. They knew the dangers of airborne transmission but refused to admit it for too long. They were warned repeatedly by scientists who studied aerosols. They knew that SARS-1, the current version we're dealing with, are a bunch of mutations of SARS-2. But SARS-1, back in the early aughts, we knew that that was airborne. So when SARS-2 came around, the people in power knew it was airborne. And they just lied to you about it. And you believe them. How cool is that? They instituted protections for themselves and for their kids. Again, the people in power send their kids to private schools that have respirators and ventilation and all sorts of things that keep the air safe. If you go to the World Economic Forum at Davos, they have multiple COVID protections. If you go to the White House, they have multiple COVID protections. If you go to 10 Downing, they have multiple fucking COVID protections. All of the governments, all the rich people, all the people in power are protecting themselves and their kids and their families, and they're lying to you about the situation so that you and your kids and families also all kill themselves or become like a situation in the Matrix where you're so sick but you're not dead, but you're alive enough in order to, like, you know, buy Doritos at your 7-Eleven or just other stupid junk food garbage, or spend money on Netflix or other kind of stuff that you don't need or whatever. And I'm not necessarily criticizing that, but my point is they want you so bedridden that the only thing you can do is give them money. That's really all they want. Give them your labor, and what little scraps you can salvage from the labor that you give them, you will give them right back immediately with junk food and garbage, right? They instituted protections for themselves and for their kids against airborne transmission, but they didn't tell the rest of us to do that. They didn't feel like it would be advantageous, to be honest. Question. Now, again, this is a long interview. You can read the whole thing. Again, I'm not going to read this whole thing here. But again, you pretty much understood here that there are people in the medical fields and scientists that actually understand what the fuck is happening here, right? So again, you can read the rest of this. I read part 1 earlier, but if you had to sum up your greatest concern right now, what would it be? That we're slowly debilitating a generation by refusing to take obvious precautions. And this is the part I wanted to get to while we go into the next article I want to talk about here. All right, check this out. Too many children with long COVID are suffering in silence. Their greatest challenge, ? The myth that the virus is harmless for kids. Again, another Trump conspiracy theory that you see people in left-wing media talk about all the time. Kids are immune. Kids are immune. They're not affected. A lie. Total lie. Was never true. Was never true in any capacity. It was just a total bunko lie that Donald Trump put into the zeitgeist, and a lot of leftists believe them because they're fucking stupid. Okay? That's just how it is. Before she got sick, and if this shit doesn't make you cry, like when I read this the first time, like, you know, last night, I was crying. This shit's fucking scary to me. Before she got sick with long COVID, Vivian, these are fake names, by the way, you know, protect identity, was at the top of all her classes at school. She loved playing basketball and netball, I don't know what the fuck that is, and running around with her dogs. She'd even take herself for runs around her family's sprawling property in regional New South Wales, just for fun. She's still only 12, but for the longest time, Vivian has dreamed of being a veterinarian when she grows up. Quote, she was so social, her mother Katie says. Quote, my husband and I were both introverts. Not V. She would party every day if she could. Now, 2 years since she caught SARS-CoV-2 for the first time, a good day for Vivian looks nothing like it used to. She's always exhausted. We're talking about a 12-year-old. Or 14 at this point. I'm not sure. I think she caught COVID at 10 and now she's 12, I think. Right. For the first time, a good day for Vivian looks nothing like it used to. She's always exhausted, but her achy limbs might feel less tingly and weak. Perhaps her upset stomach is calm, and her brain fog has cleared enough that she can do some schoolwork or call a friend. Now, isn't that fucking depressing? That, like, a good day is when you're able to work on fucking schoolwork? Like, the shit that we put kids through. No, not me. Hey, y'all. The shit that y'all put kids through. I don't have kids. I don't fucking agree with any of this horse shit. I'm not infecting people. I'm not going to places where kids are at and breathing COVID on them. I stay in my house. So the things that y'all put kids through, insane to me. Insane to me. I mean, this genocide, a complete and total genocide is what's happening here. On a really good day, she can manage a visit with her grandparents, so long as she's prepared to spend the evening in bed. Quote, long COVID makes my body feel weak, Vivian says, but I tell myself I am still powerful. If you have a kid out there and you send your kid to public school, I don't care what your excuse is. You brought a child into this world. You have to figure out ways to keep them safe. If that means making sure they wear a respirator at school, if that's the minimum you can do, you have to do it. You have to fucking protect your kids. I'm sorry. But the government lied to me is not an excuse to fuck your kids up. I'm sorry. It's just not. It's just not. She's strong because she has to be. Like many kids with long COVID, Vivian has seen a dizzying number of doctors, not all of whom have believed or helped her. This is stuff that I've said on my show. Most doctors are quacks. They don't believe garbage. They don't believe fucking shit for nothing. She's made the tricky transition to homeschooling, learning to manage her turbulent symptoms with pacing and medication. Cried fat tears of frustration, that's a weird phrase, after doing too much and wiping herself out. Quote, I want people to know that I am not lying. The gaslighting is a huge thing. Now, again, I've said before on my show many times when I talk about COVID, I was a kid who had chronic illness, and I know what it's like for doctors not to believe me. When I was like maybe 6 or 7 was when a lot of my chronic illness symptoms started. We went to doctors. My mom would take me to doctors for years before one of them believed it was a chronic issue. A lot of the times we'd go to the doctor. They'd say, you'll probably be better in a couple days. Here's a doctor's note. Be sure to pay the copay on the way out, and sent me on my merry way. They didn't believe that I had a chronic illness. Even when I was in and out of the doctor's office once or twice a month for 6 or so years. It wasn't until I was 13 that a doctor actually believed that I was ill. So imagine if a doctor believed me when I was 7. I would have had my life trajectory would be unimaginably different. But instead, the doctors didn't give a fuck, and they gaslit me and my family and said, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. You'll be better at some point. Here's some like stomach medicine to make you feel a little bit better. Whatever. Move on your merry way. So I know what it's like to experience medical gaslighting. And again, when you're a kid, you're not equipped to handle that. You don't understand what's happening is you're being gaslit by a professional, by an authority. A professional in the authoritative sense, not in the real, they actually know what they're talking about sense, right? So when you're a kid, you just think, the doctor said I'm not sick, so therefore, why am I feeling like this? Am I broken? Is there is it my fault that I'm sick? Am I doing something wrong? Is it like, am I creating the sickness, right? So when I was a kid, I wrestled with these thoughts a lot of the time. Why am I sick all the time when all the doctors say I'm fine? Or the doctors say, it'll pass eventually. 2 years later, I'm still sick. Oh, it'll clear itself up. Don't worry. Another 2 years later, you'll be fine. Another 2 years later. And then eventually a doctor was like, here's some of the issues. We'll get you on a plan. We'll figure it out. And then a year later, a lot of my symptoms decreased, and I still had chronic health issues for another 5 or 6 years, but it was not nearly as bad. It was manageable because I was on certain medications and stuff. Again, I've told this story before. I don't want to go into the whole thing. But again, medical gaslighting is a huge problem, and especially for long COVID. This shit is fucking depressing. I want people to know that I'm not lying. This is a 12-year-old. A 12-year-old is pleading with the world. I'm not lying. I'm really sick. Please believe me. It's insane. I mean, this fucking shit is crazy. And you go to most left-wing media shows, the people who should and claim to care about people like this, they don't say a thing. They don't fucking say a thing because they're selling tickets to their live in-person shows. They're selling tickets to Politicon. They're trying to hawk their merchandise to you. And they want you to go see them at all their events that they're going. And they're trying to go to all these in-person events to raise their credibility and their profile because they don't give a shit about telling you the truth. All they give a shit about is their narcissistic careers. That's why I hate left media for the most part. Anti. Raise your hand. Quote, I want people to know I'm not just trying to get out of doing school or sport. I wish I could do sport. I wish they understood I'm just trying to save myself from being stuck in bed in pain for days afterwards. Again, a 12-year-old is pleading with the world to believe her. More than 4 years after the first COVID patients began raising the alarm that they weren't getting better, scientists are still racing to unravel the mystery of why a significant minority of people a significant minority of people, like, again, even the wording here in this article is a little suspect, develop debilitating chronic symptoms while others seem to recover just fine. Now, again, seem is the operative word here, because a lot of the times, again, you can have something like cancer and not know it. It can have stage 1 cancer. You don't know. That's why you got to get cancer screening. Stage 2 cancer. I might have cancer right now. I haven't gotten a cancer screening in a while. I could have cancer right now. I don't know it. Until you drop dead or you drop on the floor, you wake up in the hospital room and they say, bro, you got a giant fucking tumor. You're going to die instantly in the next fucking 2 days. You're done for. You're cooked. And you're like, fuck, I had no idea. How is that even possible? Because a lot of the times when your body is ill, there's no signal telling your brain about that specific illness. Cancer is one of them, until like the tumor grows to a certain size to where it actually causes symptoms, right? So a lot of the time people seem to recover just fine, and then they're not actually recovered, but they think they are for the mechanisms I've explained previously. But if the plight of adults with long COVID remains poorly understood, the millions of children, again, according to the CDC in the United States, 100% of kids have been infected with COVID at least one time, and they don't track subsequent infections. And you know what happens when you go to school every day? You fill in the rest. Who have it worldwide are practically invisible. Their suffering and their formative years they're losing to this disease. Obscured by the myths that COVID is harmless for kids and that the pandemic is over. Again, Donald Trump conspiracy theories that left-wingers propagate endlessly on their media shows. In Australia, the lack of awareness is biting in shocking ways. Too many children with long COVID are being dismissed by doctors who say there's nothing they can do to help, or worse, that the pain and fatigue is all in their head. That's what I was told when I was sick as a kid. For years, I was told it's all in my head. I'm making it up. I remember a specific doctor telling my mom in the room with me, I think your kid is just making it up to get out of school. That's what the doctor said. And my mom believed it. And she would send me to school while I was sick. And I remember one time I puked once, like in class, because I was sent to school while I was sick. And then, of course, I'd get made fun of by my peers for such a thing, all because a doctor accused me of making it up. So when I say that this shit affects me personally, it does. Because I know what it's like to not be believed by doctors and your parents about being sick. I know what it's like. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But an entire generation is fucked because their parents believed Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Imagine telling your kid, I gave you COVID over and over because I thought Joe Biden had your personal health and safety in mind. I gave you a sickness that's going to debilitate you for the rest of your life because I believe Donald Trump had your interest in mind. I believe Donald Trump. And so now you're permanently disabled. I believe Joe Biden. I believed Ashish Jha. I believed Dr. Anthony Fauci. And so now that's why you're permanently disabled. Now imagine how these kids are going to feel about their parents. Not good. Not good. They're being pushed out of school by teachers who don't understand why they can't come to class or run around with their peers. Now, again, I don't want to make this whole thing about me, but I had that happen. I dropped out of high school. Why? Because I failed classes with 100 points because of attendance. There were several classes in high school that I got 90 plus. Some of them I even scored a perfect 100. Now, I'm not trying to brag. I'm just trying to say that I failed a class with a 100% grade because of attendance. And then they forced me to take that same class the next year. And I remember when I went into the same class the next year, in 10th grade, or I guess 9th grade too, the sequel, I told the teacher, I showed them my report card from last year. Hey, I don't belong here. I'm just letting you know. I'm just going to sit in the back of the room and read books. Just don't bother me. And that's what I told my teacher. My teacher didn't believe me. She thought I made it up. And then she gave me like a fucking packet to fill out on the whole curriculum for the semester. I filled it all out in one day, and I got another 100. Maybe I flubbed a question or two, but maybe like a 95. She then believed me. She said she would try to fight to, reverse the failing grade or whatever because of attendance. And then I never heard from it again, and I just sat in the back of the class reading books all day in that class, right? And then later on, right, the principal, I remember having a meeting with the principal and a guidance counselor and my mother, and they basically said, you have to retake all these classes, which was requiring me to go to summer school for 3 years. I would have been going to school until I was 19 or 20, or drop out and take a GED. And that's what I did. I was forced to drop out because they just didn't believe I was sick and failed me, even though I knew all the information. I had all the information. I was one of the smartest kids in my classes, but they failed me because of attendance, and they didn't believe I was really sick, and then they forced me to drop out. And the other option, which is not a real option, is to go to high school and take the same course over and over again until you're 20 years old. Right? And that kind of shit is happening all around the world right now with long COVID. It's insane. I mean, the shit the people in power, the authorities, teachers, parents, doctors are doing to their kids, insurmountably evil. It is evil. Evil. Every villain is lemons, motherfucker. That's what's happening here. Their parents have been gaslighted or gaslit, depending on what pronunciation you prefer. It's not even a pronunciation, but spelling. Grammatation. And blamed, too, not just by the medical professionals, but by their closest friends and family. The gaslighting is all over the place. Experts are concerned that all this ignorance and apathy and the unwillingness of governments to do more to curb COVID transmission is exposing a generation of children to the same chronic illnesses and disability with potentially devastating consequences. Now imagine, you're getting up there in years. Now, fortunately for me, my mom died when I was fucking like 22, so I don't have to deal with this. But imagine, you're getting up there in years, and the only people you can rely on to take care of you in your elder years are your kids. The kids who got long COVID when they were 12 and were bedridden, fucking, they're not going to be able to take care of you. So what are we going to do when we have an entire generation that just literally cannot function in any capacity? Who's going to be manning all the fucking machines? Oh, right, maybe we'll get robots to do it, and it won't be that big of a deal. But just imagine the impact of this. 10 years, 15 years from now, unmitigated spread. Not to mention with climate change, we're going to have climate disaster. We are fucked. Well and truly fucked. And no one wants to talk about it, except for me. And whenever I talk about it, I get laughed out of the room. Other left-wing media people, they don't talk about it. Why? Because they'll get laughed out of the room. So they march along to get along in their fantasy world. It's horseshit. Absolute and utter horseshit. Quote, these kids' worlds just got very small very quickly. Now that's how I felt when I was a kid. My entire world was cartoons and video games. I had nothing. I had nothing else. My mom wouldn't let me make friends. Sometimes, like when on the rare occasions I did go to school, maybe some people would be nice to me, but it really wasn't genuine. It was out of pity. I had some internet friends sometimes, and I was like a teenager that I would play like Halo with, and that is not the same thing. But when I was, from around 6 years old up until I got an internet connection, because I didn't have internet until I was like 13, 14, and then I could meet people online. But from 6 up until that point, all I had was cartoons and video games. That's it. I had no friends. My parents were neglectful. The only thing I had was cartoons and video games. That was my entire universe. And you know what? Hey, that's still my entire universe. So look at the damage that does. Right? So, geez. Says David Putrino, who runs a long COVID clinic as Director of Rehabilitation Innovation for the Mount Sinai Health System in New York. Quote, We see kids missing school, being unable to participate in sports. We see social isolation. Long COVID is, quote, a lot more complicated and more brutal, unquote, for young people, he says. Adults tend to be better able to navigate the medical intricacies and politics of their illnesses. Quote, I don't like comparative suffering as a concept, but I do know that kids are having a harder time with it because people seem to be less understanding of that. And then also less, like, adults don't care about what kids say. They don't trust kids. And also kids, they're not equipped. They don't know what the fuck's going on. A 12-year-old is factually impossible for them to have a total grasp on the world political stage, geopolitics, controversial healthcare politics. It is impossible for a 12-year-old to know all this information. I would even say it's unlikely for a 20-year-old, a high school graduate, or even a college graduate to know all that information. And we expect kids to be their own healthcare representatives. It's fucking stupid. It's garbage. It's garbage. A crucial reason pediatric long COVID has been overlooked is that children generally suffer less severe acute infections than adults. Governments and public health agencies have also been pushing the narrative that the only negative possible outcome of catching COVID is death. Again, the binary worldview. Either you're perfectly healthy, everything is fine and perfect and dandy, woohoo, or you're dead. Those are the only two options, according to Donald Trump and Joe Biden and other world leaders all over. And we forget about the cumulative risk over time. It doesn't matter how mild your acute COVID infection is. He says, quote, you have the same risk of developing long COVID. And I say cumulative because the latest data shows us that with every reinfection, your risk for long COVID increases. Again, according to the CDC's own numbers. And of course, the CDC is a highly conservative, extremely fascistic organization, right, that manages disease apartheid. Really, what they should call themselves are the Center for Disease Apartheid is what they should be calling themselves. And even by their own numbers, 99.9% of Americans are going to have long COVID, or at least the starting phase of long COVID by 2026. That's their own numbers. So, but of course they don't say that. You just have to go on their website and crunch the numbers yourself. They don't have an article on the CDC website that actually says that because they want to hide that information. But I've done a segment about that on one of my shows. It's kind of hard to look up my shows nowadays because I don't really label anything. But hey, whatever. I'm trying to put in minimal effort on that. Sue me if you want. I don't know. What does long COVID look like? Getting a handle on the scale of the problem is difficult because prevalence estimates of long COVID in children vary widely. Though many researchers believe it likely affects 1 to 5% of kids who catch the virus. While some argued it is rare and not a concern for most families, others insist even 1% is significant given huge swaths of the population are getting reinfected. And now again, if you're getting COVID, if you're going to public schools, you're getting COVID maybe 5 or 6 times a year, maybe even more. 1% even, or 5% rolling 7. Like again, if you said to me, right, you have a 52 card deck, if you pull like a red jack, you're gonna die. But if you don't pull the red jack, you get $1 billion. You know what I would do? I would roll those odds. But if you told me that the option is you have to roll those odds every week for the rest of your life, you know what I wouldn't do? Roll those fucking odds, because eventually the red jack is gonna fucking kill me. Okay, that's just how it is. I'm sorry. And that's what we're doing. And that's what y'all are doing to kids. I gotta quit. I'm not doing. I do not have children. I do not advocate for any of this. I do not go to anywhere where children are present to infect them. I have separated myself from society because of this fucking shit. Okay, that's just how it is. You can read the rest of this. I would even argue you should read the rest of this. I'm just going to read a couple more things here from this section. This is a long article, okay? This is a really long article. I could spend an hour reading this whole thing to you. Maybe I should. But I want to do one more thing before the show is over. I don't even know how long has this show been going on. Let's see. Let's check my timer at. Ooh, 90 minutes. Yowza. Yowza bowza. Okay. It's not just all in your head. Sometimes that conversion. Okay, sometimes that conversion happens terrifyingly fast. For 3 months after Jack caught COVID in May, he was in and out of the emergency department in Perth Hospital with 10 out of 10 stomach pain and fatigue so crushing he couldn't walk. Now, aged 13, Jack was fit and talented athlete whose life revolved around sports, especially cricket, rugby, and tennis. It's a major reason his father, Brett, was so shocked when during one of their visits to the hospital, a neurologist performed a few reflexive tests on Jack, concluded his nerves were fine, and then announced his symptoms were psychological. Again, quack doctors left and right. He said, listen, it's all in your son's head. He has something called FND, functional neurological disorder, says Brett. I said, is that psychosomatic? And he said, well, we don't call it that anymore. Brett now knows that FND is a controversial diagnosis that should only be made after excluding other possible medical conditions. Numerous long COVID patients have reported being misdiagnosed with FND, a precarious situation, experts say, because it can block their access to testing and treatment. They just give you a fake diagnosis just to shove you out of the system so they don't need to actually do their job. That's just how it is. But Jack was devastated. He was crying because he's the kid who goes to rugby with a migraine. He'll push through anything. That's going to cause a stroke. That's where you see a lot of these kids dropping dead in gym class because they really so desperately want to be normal. They watch all these cartoons and movies that are set in like the aughts or the 90s or whatever, where people are going to school and having great times, doing all the sporting events, all that. They watch these shows and movies that create a false version of the world that they want to be a part of, and then they don't live in that world anymore. We live in the pandemic climate apocalypse world. So they're trying so hard to fit in, and that's why you're seeing a lot of kids dropping dead in gym class all over the country, all over the world. He'll push through anything, Brett says. So for the neurologist to say it was all in his head, I think that broke him a bit. A couple of months later, having dug deep into the research on long COVID, Brett took Jack to Europe. To Europe. Imagine having to fly to another fucking continent just to see a doctor. Where he underwent several cycles of an expensive blood filtering treatment called HELP apheresis. The enormous cost, about $30,000 all up, should have ruled the trip out. But with the generous support of family and friends, they raised enough money to go. Brett felt sure it was the best next step. Now imagine, this is a parent who actually cares. How many parents do you know, yourself possibly included, would be willing to do this? Let's be honest. A lot of parents say they would do anything for their kids just to seem like they're cool and good parents. My mom used to say that around her coworkers and friends with me around. Meanwhile, when we got home, she would hit me. She would tell other people, oh, I would do anything for my kid. And then 3 hours later, she'd throw a plate at my face. People say a lot of things that aren't true. But just imagine how many parents would actually be willing to do this. The answer, probably less than 1%. Parents don't give a fuck about their kids. Taking vitamins and supplements to help Jack to a point, but his progress had stalled. Local doctors weren't offering anything other than a paracetamol. I'm going to be honest with you. Is that a medication? I'm sorry. I'm just, Quote, we were reaching the 6-month mark, and I knew we had to act quickly, Brett says. Jack is a really, really good sportsman. I didn't want him to live with a disability. And this is another aspect of this also, of like, it's kind of already too little too late in this instance, right? It's too little too late for me to become an Olympic athlete. It really is, I can be extremely physically fit, right? I can get my health in order, and, I try to, but the chance for me to become an Olympic athlete ended when I was 6 years old. Not to say I would ever, not to say I was interested in that when I was 6, but the door was closed on me because I had a chronic illness as a kid that lasted for about 8 years or so in the main phase, about 15, 16 years or so overall. Most of my, a majority of my life up until this point, I was bedridden on a routine basis. So, I'm just saying, at a point, you got to come to terms with reality. Maybe you're not going to be a sportsman. And again, telling a kid that they'll never be able to achieve their dreams, that's not a conversation anyone wants to have. For long COVID patients, apheresis involves removing the blood, filtering it of SARS-CoV-2 spike proteins and so-called microclots that may be clogging capillaries and stopping oxygen from getting to tissues, and then returning it to the body. The microclot hypothesis is, as a driver of long COVID, remains just that. Some experts have warned there is little published evidence showing apheresis is a effective treatment. Yeah, because you'd have to filter the entire body. Every organ you'd have to filter, not just the blood, but every organ you'd have to filter out SARS-CoV-2. And let's be honest, that's not even really possible. And then, of course, you go back to school, you get reinfected, so it's all for no reason anyway. While some patients say it has helped them almost fully recover, others have reported it made no difference or in some cases made them worse. So those who decide to have it are gambling that it will work. Jack made a remarkable recovery. I got a little better, like 90% better. He says, I was able to play tennis and go surfing and all that. He's since suffered a disappointing relapse. And now, again, probably related to going to play tennis and going surfing. You think you're better. You do a little too much because you think you're back to 100%, and then you fall all the way back down the stairs. No, I'm not saying that that's definitively. I'm just saying that it probably didn't help. But his symptoms aren't as bad as they were before apheresis. In all, it was a positive experience, says Brett, who is seriously considering another trip overseas. Now, again, this idea that we need to fucking fly around the fucking planet just to get a doctor to believe you is insane. He's frustrated that he felt forced to pursue an unapproved treatment on the other side of the world, and that most doctors' understanding of long COVID lags so far behind the science. Quote, it's really been tough to sit on the margins of what people think is a conspiracy and what is science and logic. Again, as I've said before, we live in the age of pestilence. The germ theory of disease is gone. No one believes in it anymore. They'll say they might believe in it in the same way, right? Like, again, this is my analogy. If you believe germs can cause disease and disease can kill you, you would do everything you can to avoid getting germs, right? In the same way, if you believe driving your car into the Grand Canyon is going to kill you, you would do everything you can to avoid driving your car into the Grand Canyon. You know what that means? Turning around and not driving your car into the fucking Grand Canyon. But when it comes to germs, people will say, yeah, I believe in the germ theory of disease. And yet, they're driving their car directly into the Grand Canyon, right? So, like, what the fuck? So, again, I highly recommend reading this article. It's horrifying. It's horrifying. What people are doing to their kids, what people are doing to themselves with this virus, it's horrifying. It is horrifying. And you don't think, I'm just telling you my story as a chronic illness sufferer from a young age. You bet your fucking sweet motherfucking bippy I resent my family system for not trying harder. I resent the fuck out of them. I resent the fuck out of my parents, out of everyone in my family system. I resent the shit out of them. I also resent the school system for forcing me to drop out of school, even though they knew for a fact that I was well equipped to graduate early even. Again, I dropped out, got a GED. It's an equivalency. I took the GED test. I'm not trying to sit here and brag about being the smart kid. I'm just telling you my experience, okay? When I dropped out, I went and got a GED. I remember taking the test and I was scared shitless because I was like, shit. I was never allowed to attend 11th or 12th grade classes. You know, I was just forced to do 9th grade and 10th grade and then the sequel, 9th grade 2, 10th grade 2, right? So I was like, shit, maybe I'm not equipped. Maybe I should. And I didn't study for it at all, right? Because I hate studying. I don't like doing it. I like learning, but I hate studying, if that makes sense. I remember I went and took the GED test. It was the easiest thing in the world I've ever done. And I was the first one to finish. And I passed, I only missed a question or two. And I was like, really? That's it? That's it? I was blown the fuck away that now again, some people say the GED is lesser than a high school degree, and I would be willing to agree to that, because again, you know, in high school you have more opportunities for more ambient knowledge. Like, you have access to teachers, you could ask questions, right? So I would be willing to say GED is like lesser than a high school diploma in that kind of narrow sense. But also, because I was sick all the time, I was an autodidact. I read a lot. I read a lot of books about science, biology, astronomy, are my two favorite subjects when I was a kid, right? So I knew a lot of information that a lot of my peers didn't. And so when I was forced to drop out of high school, I was nervous as fuck about the GED, and I aced it instantly. You know, it was like the easiest thing I've done in the world. And so to me, it's like, I resent the fact that my school system forced me to do that instead of just believing me about being sick all the time, right? It would be one thing if my grades were shit, you know? Is another thing to get extremely high grades, right? And then the teacher's telling you, sorry, we're not going to let you graduate high school. I resent the fuck out of them. I resent the fuck out of all the doctors that refuse to take my sickness seriously. And I'm telling you, an entire generation of kids who are probably going to be even more resentful than me. And I'll tell you, I am a spiteful, resentful, bitter motherfucker. I'm just being honest with you. A lot of people, they wouldn't say that out loud, but they would also, you know, they are also bitter and resentful. It's not popular to say it out loud. I'm telling you, an entire generation. You add in the climate apocalypse on top of this. You add in all the wars going on. You add in food insecurity and the fact that most food is filled with poison. There's going to be a lot of pissed off motherfucking children. They're going to grow up to hate the government, to hate their families, to hate their parents, to hate the fucking institutions that raised them. I guarantee you. And fortunately for those in power, they're going to be too disabled to do anything about it. So, that sucks. I want to check this out here. So I want to read a little bit of this. I don't want to go too far into this. And then I want to play a clip from a politician. A far right-wing fascist politician. So, check this out. Face masks are less effective than sunglasses in masking face identity. Right? So you can read this whole study if you'd like. But essentially, the effect of covering faces on face identification is recently garnering interest amid the COVID-19 pandemic. This is published a year or so ago. Here we investigated how face identification performance was affected by two types of face disguise, sunglasses and face masks. Observers studied a series of faces and then judged whether a series of test faces comprising studied and novel faces had been studied before or not. Face stimuli were present either without coverings, full faces, wearing sunglasses covering the upper region, eyes and eyebrows, or wearing surgical masks covering the lower region, nose, mouth, chin. We found that sunglasses led to larger reductions in sensitivity to face identity than face masks did. While both disguises increased the tendency to report faces as studied before, a bias that was absent for full faces. In addition, faces disguised during either study or test only, i.e. study disguised faces test with full faces and vice versa, led to further reductions in sensitivity from both studying and testing with disguised faces, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so what they're saying is they did a lot of before and after, try to match up your faces. If you had sunglasses on versus if you had just sunglasses on versus just a mask on, people were less likely to figure out who you are with the sunglasses versus the mask, right? So, with all that being said, let's tune in to far-right neo-fascist politician Governor Kathy Hochul on a press conference maybe about a week ago-ish, give or take. You know, I didn't do a show last week talking about we need to ban masking on the subways.
Masks to evade we will not tolerate individuals using masks to evade responsible for criminal or threatening behavior.
Now, this bitch she needs to take a speech therapy course. Like, what the fuck was this?
To evade responsible for criminal or threatening behavior.
To evade responsible for what? responsibility. Thank you very much. But again, you're seeing this in North Carolina where fascists are trying to ban medical masks because they think if you wear a mask during a pandemic, that makes you a criminal. Again, the government wants you sick and disabled. That's what they want. And now we have a fascist, far-right, Democratic politician announcing the same thing. But are they going to ban sunglasses? If you're banning a mask during a pandemic, also during an air quality nightmare because of wildfires, but because, oh, what if they're a criminal, but you're not banning sunglasses? I have news for you. It has nothing to do with science. It has nothing to do with logic. These are Nazis, and they promote and endorse disease apartheid. They want you to become permanently disabled so that you do not have the same rights as them, their trust fund baby kids, and the rest of their fucking rich elite families.
My team is working on a solution, but on a subway.
This bitch, I need to raise the fucking volume. I can barely hear. What the fuck? Shit. Alright, I failed. I have failed my task. I have failed my task of trying to fucking... Oh no. Oh no. My apologies. I got fucking brain fog. I pressed the wrong fucking button and it all turned off. Alright.
People, we will not tolerate individuals using masks to evade responsible for criminal or threatening behavior. My team is working on a solution, but on a subway, people should not be able to hide behind a mask to commit crimes. I've spoken to Mayor Adams, who's been outspoken on this issue, with the MTA, with local law enforcement, and beginning conversations with the legislature since this takes legislative action, which we're considering. There's obviously a problem here. This will be dealt with. And there's legitimate reasons why people wear face coverings, mask coverings, head coverings, from COVID or the flu, religious reasons, delivery drivers protecting themselves from the elements, and individuals involved in our festivities, our Caribbean events, our many events, Halloween. I assure everyone, we understand how complex this issue is, and we're just listening to people and addressing their needs and taking them very seriously.
So in North Carolina, they instituted a mask ban, or at least the governor is going to be the one to decide whether or not it's in. And it had a lot of pushback, and then they did a revision of the bill that said there's a mask ban except for medical, if you have a doctor's note, essentially, to wear a medical grade mask. Now, when most doctors, as I've established, do not believe in long COVID, how are you going to get that medical designation? And also, what's to stop a cop from just removing your mask, forcing your mask off, infecting you with COVID, and then reading your doctor's note and then saying, oh, and then putting your mask back on? You've already gotten infected with COVID, so it doesn't matter. That's the thing. When you leave the house, you need to have a respirator on at all times. At all times, 100%. The moment you take it off around people, you are exposing yourself to viruses. That's just how it is. And in the case of New York and a lot of areas in the upper United States, also air quality issues with wildfire smoke and toxic gas going through the air, right? But fascists institute this like weird exemption thing, right? In the same way that they have exemptions for life of the mother when it comes to abortion. What does that mean? Oh, if the life of the mother's at risk, then you can fucking do the abortion. But how do you prove the life of the mother is at risk? So what happens is you do the abortion, and then the government sues you. And you have to spend years as a doctor going in and out of court trying to prove that the life of the mother was at stake. And what does that do? That costs you a lot of money. That costs your employment, a place of employment, a lot of money and time because you can't work as much as you could before because you're in and out of court. Which means a lot of the times doctors and hospitals are just going to err on the side of caution, err on the side of what doesn't cost them money, and just say, your life might be at stake, let's roll the dice. And that's the same thing that's going to happen here with all these mask bans that they're trying to do. Your life might be at stake. You know, by the time that you're able to litigate whether or not you had a right to wear a mask, you've already been infected with COVID, and therefore, doesn't matter anymore. Again, this is disease apartheid. That's what this is. Globally, and especially in the United States here, because this is where I live, so this is where I focus my energy to my fellow Americans. This is disease apartheid. They want you sick and they want you unwell, but not so unwell that you can't go to work and give them your time, labor, and energy, and then get money that you funnel right back into their system with your, with junk food and other garbage you don't need. Now, again, I'm not saying you shouldn't be allowed to ever have junk food or to buy movies. I'm just saying, like, you need to understand how all of these things are connected. Yeah, if you're eating junk food every day, you're an addict. You're a good little consumer, right? You're wasting your money and giving it to corporations that want to kill you. Again, not necessarily kill you so quickly, but hopefully kill you before 67, and then you can collect Social Security, right? Or your pension, because they don't want to pay out pensions. They want to kill you before you get old enough to actually get some money back that you've been giving to them, right? Now, again, every drug you need to use in moderation. Food is a drug. Junk food is a drug, right? That's just how we think about it. But again, are they banning sunglasses? No, but they're banning face masks. Isn't that interesting? I don't know. That's just interesting to me. I find that to be very curious. So, anyway, yeah, we're fudged. I don't know what else to say. I mean, this is not good. This is not good, everybody. This is not good. Anyway, that's pretty much my show. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. I don't know. Have a good day.
You can do it, baby. I love you so much. And it's bad news. Bad things are happening. Mom, I'm sorry. Mom, I didn't do it.